If you are just joining us on Facebook Live, I'm Lauren from RDU on Stage, and this is an amazing panel tonight. I'm so grateful to you all for being here. Yolanda Rabun will be moderating. If you have any questions, be sure to type them in the RDU on Stage Facebook comments, and I will get them to the panel. Um, we lost Antoine, but I hope he'll come back. And Yolanda, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. I'll stall so that we can get to the point. First of all, thank you all for joining us this evening. It is an esteemed group of people who are here. And I want to quickly introduce them so that after they begin to speak, you can ask questions and know a little bit more about them as they tell you a little bit more about themselves. So I'm going to start at the top of my screen, which has James. Sasser. He has been involved, I should say, in the development of dozens of musicals on both sides as an actor, a writer, and a producer. He has worked with many, many organizations, including Riverdance to Sundance, Jesus Christ Superstar to Forbidden Broadway to Theater Works. He is a book writer, a lyricist, and has a new show, The Cubamore, I believe it is, as well as Bottle Shock, that is out. And then right down to below him in my screen, I have the wonderful Eric Woodall. He is from North Carolina. He is the producing artistic director of North Carolina Theater. And prior to coming back home to North Carolina, he had a successful 16-year-long career as a casting director for Tara Rubin Casting in New York City. He has cast Broadway productions of Aladdin, Falsettos, Les Mis. He was the director for Mamma Mia, the regional director. Did I get that right?
One of the resident directors.
Resident directors, thank you. Yeah. And more nicely enough, he was named by American Theater Magazine as one of the 6 theater workers you should know. Below in my screen to Eric is Antoine. Antoine L. Smith. Antoine, he was last seen on Broadway, the Tony-nominated Best Revival of the musical Carousel. And for those of you who may have been watching in the North Carolina area, Antoine was actually getting ready to star in Memphis at North Carolina Theater that had to be stopped, unfortunately, because of the virus. But he has done amazing stuff with The Color Purple on Broadway, Miss Saigon. He had his Broadway debut in Memphis, as we learned today on Instagram, if you were watching us. And he is getting ready to blow up and star in the MJ musical in 2021, because it has, what? And last, but not least, in the least of anything, I'm just gonna blow this woman up, so y'all just get ready because she's like family. But we have Amber Iman. And Amber graduated magna cum laude from Howard University with a musical theater degree. She started her career in the regional theater in a play called Stick Fly. I mean, she did many other things, but notably she was nominated for the Irene for the Best Supporting Actress in that particular role as Cheryl. She made her Broadway debut as the High Priestess of Soul, Nina Simone, in Soul Doctor. She played in regional theater Aldonza in The Man of La Mancha, where she was nominated for a Helen Hayes Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Musical. She went back to Broadway in 2016 and Shuffle Along, and then from there went to Witness Uganda, and of course she played in Hamilton, and probably most notably for the conversation that we're going to be having tonight, Amber is the proud founding member of the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. So I'd like to say, first of all, thank you all to all of my guests tonight on behalf of the RDU on stage. Tonight, we're going to be talking about racism and Broadway and regional theater, how all of that trickles down and affects one another. And I want to give a few rules of engagement. First of all, for those of you who are listening, I encourage you to ask questions as we are going along in case something comes up that you want to ask the panel about. But for you guys, I want us to have a conversation. I want this to be a discussion. A lot of people, they hear racism and they start freaking out nowadays. Are we still talking about it? Why do we have to talk about it? And I don't want this to be an interview, if you will. I just want you to talk. So no one's muted. We'll respect each other's time as far as who has to say what. But I want us to have as crazy as it's going to sound, fun, because life is supposed to be about fun. And anything that we've known that was not fun, we getting ready to make it fun because we're talking about it, right? All right. So that said, my goal for tonight, for all of you all, and for the people who are listening, is that we understand this concept of racism, Broadway and regional theaters, and that we explore strategies, if you will, to dismantle some of the problems we've seen, and that we examine the roles that people in theater have in helping us to explore the strategies to dismantle. I'll help you along the way. Don't worry. Just in case you start throwing stuff around, I'll bring you back. That said, talk to me about racism. I mean, what is that from your personal point of view? Amber, since you laughed, my sister, I'm handing it to you.
I mean, racism is rooted in fear. It's about power and control. It's fear of you losing the power that you think you have, because a lot of it is in a lot of people's minds. It's fear of the unknown. It's these people that you don't know, who you've never spoken with, who you've never shared time with, and what could they possibly do to take away some of your power? That's really like at the root of it. A lot of fear, a lot of fear.
I think there's also a lot of frustration that goes along with that, frustrating about a certain demographic or a certain class getting ahead of you and how you now start to feel inferior about things. So I also think a lot of racism is rooted in frustration as well as fear.
Okay, frustration, fear. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. I agree with what was said. I mean, so much. I am so grateful to be a part of this tonight. In many ways, I don't feel worthy to offer up what my idea of racism is. I mean, I want to identify, and I want to listen, and I want to learn. I mean, as we go into how this applies right now into the Broadway business and the regional theater business, I have a lot to say, a lot of experience, a lot of ideas on how we can change and grow. Not ideas like tactical things, but anyway, I agree with it being frustration and fear.
I want to empower you, though, as a white man. And I use that word on purpose, right? Because, again, I want this to be a conversation. One thing that Amber and Antoine, I thought you nicely and delicately stepped away from is the concept that racism has to do with white and black, right? And the very point that white people feel that they are superior to black people. And that part of the reason that it exists is because they needed to create a comparison so that they could be better. And unfortunately, that just disseminated through history and through time and through all of our institutions to the point that racism exists and we don't even know it's there. And I say we collectively, because sometimes black people are going along with what they think is normal, and that crap is not normal, just as white people are going along with the privilege that they think what's actually okay is not okay, whether it's through things that they've said, things that they've done in auditions, things that they've done in hiring practices in Broadway, all those things. So again, I want to open this up a little bit more. And as I said to you, Eric, and to you, James, because you are white and you may have been on the side of privilege, or you may have been able to witness privilege, I think what you say does matter, right? And that you are at the table as much as we are at the table. Part of this, again, is the conversation. I think that you are definitely in a place to learn, because there are a lot of things that you may hear from Amber, Antoine, and even me about our experiences, but nonetheless, you are a part of the solution. So definitely be here.
I appreciate that. And I mean, just, you know, the coalition, the amazing Broadway Black Lives Matter, again, was phenomenal. So I just applaud you, Amber. I applaud it was so helpful, and the number of people that it helped. It's I mean, just to begin to plant the seeds of change. And I think that's where we start. And for me, you know, I think several of you know me and know that this has been a matter that has been so important to me for a long time. It's not just like 3 weeks ago, this was suddenly like, oh, and
Right.
so, and unfortunately for so many people, it has been. But this is not a time to be patted on the back or pat myself on the back or
Right.
think, okay, good for me. It's a time to say, well, if there were some things that were heading in the right direction, okay, but let's figure out what else we can do and what else needs to be done. So
Right.
that's why I'm here.
And just to piggyback off of Eric said, I myself personally, I've noticed a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, regional theaters, Broadway producers. Oh, Black Lives Matter, but they are not offering up what they plan to do to resolve that. Nobody is saying that. That's what I want to hear.
And the crazy part about it is doing the work with the coalition, we have producers and people reach out to us, and what we realize is everyone is scared and everyone is waiting on someone else to make the first move.
Right.
That's
Wow.
why we're not hearing from producers, because everyone, first of all, they don't know what to do.
Right.
They don't
Okay,
have
so
anyone in their circle who knows what to do, so they're
Right.
all just going like this. Who's gonna go first? And so
Exactly.
time is
So
up.
Amber, to that point, because I've been watching you on Instagram for a while, I think I love your humor. I love your straightforwardness. I want to talk about, just so we can be clear about what this thing is that they need to be figuring out what to do. You've been doing stuff over time, telling people what to do. In marketing, for example, I want, can you talk about when Playbill would do certain things and what you experienced and what you did in response to that?
Well, like you said, like marketing. I told a story on Facebook. My Broadway debut was in 2013, and I was playing Nina Simone, and we were having audiences in houses that were not Black, or there weren't many people of color. And so the producers are scrambling to come up with a marketing strategy. And what they thought would make the most sense was to send me to random churches in Harlem to sing. And I was like, Nina wasn't a gospel singer. Like, I'm trying to figure out what songs I'm going to be singing in Harlem. And so I just asked them, like, just out of curiosity, what is the purpose or what is the strategy? And I'm on stage. There are 5 white men producers circling me. And one of them says, well, we tried sending out flyers, but Black people don't read. So if you go and sing, they'll listen. I'm 27. I am by myself. There's no one who looks like me in the vicinity. I have no allies. I have no friends. This is my first show. I don't know anything. I don't know recourse. There's no HR. Who do I call? What do I say? So it's moments like that when we as artists of color and Black artists laugh a lot of times when people talk about diversity in casting, because it's like, oh, you think the problem is casting? We're still trying to convince them that we can read. Like, this thing is so deep. It's so much underground. It's so much unlearning that needs to happen. If you think the problem starts anywhere near casting, you are so lost.
Starts in conception.
It starts, it's the infrastructure. This thing is embedded in the floor and the foundation under the ground.
Yeah.
These foundations, organizations, and institutions were built without us in mind. They weren't intended for us. Ruben Santiago Hudson said it best. He was like, it's theirs. They paid for it. They own it. It's theirs. And here we are in this place of like, it's opportunity and all these things we want and could demand. And he said to me, Amber, how would you feel if somebody walked into your house where you pay all the bills and started telling you what to do in your house? So we find ourselves collectively with all these stories and experiences and times when things have been denied us, times when hair has been touched. And Cody, one of our friend stage managers, wore a hoodie backstage and everyone started calling him Trayvon. Like, we've been in so many situations and we've kept our eyes down and our head down and we've made ourselves small. And now we finally have a moment to speak and be heard. But we don't know what to do. We don't quite know what to ask for. Producers are looking at scared. They're afraid to be called out. They're afraid to be called racist. So everybody's afraid. We're getting less afraid, but everybody is really afraid right now.
Right.
And that's been such an interesting place too, is because I know I have felt sometimes like if I say, I don't want to say something wrong, but I know that if you're scared to do anything, then a person just freezes and doesn't do anything. And that's not what we need right now. But I could not agree more that it's got to go to the root. And how we do that, I don't know 100%, but I was reflecting on this today. In all my years in casting, and when people would talk about, or when it would come up and people would talk about diversity in casting, I mean, many times I didn't talk about it, just would do it or push it that way. But when people talk about it, there is no one in the 16 years that would admit that they were racist, or probably even think that they were. But then what would happen? They were all like, yes, 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 we need to be open. Yes, we need to, yes, until it came down to it. And when it comes down to it, and it starts to, and I was fascinated for years by the excuses, the reasons I would hear. And it would boil down to, that just doesn't feel right. That's not a perfect fit. Have
you
so
ever been in that situation, Eric, where you were in, yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, many times. And sometimes when I was able to, I could say, could you explain that? Like, what are you talking about a timbre of the voice? Are you trained to think that it's supposed to be this thing? What is it? And sometimes that would help break through a little bit. Many times it didn't do anything. But we have to go so far back past that so that the people in the room are not even, that it's not a question. But I don't know how we get there. You know, I've been a part of these shows. I've been embarrassed being a part of shows that were on Miscasting that were all African American or mostly African American, and it would be a sea of white faces behind that table. And I would think when people would come in, I was like, they're acting like this is fine. This is not fine.
Eric,
this is not fine.
I agree with you, Eric. You may never know what it feels like to walk into a room full of sometimes 10 and 12 white people sitting behind the table, ultimately judging you. I mean, the fear is crippling sometimes, literally crippling sometimes.
Yeah, and that's beyond the concept of you're an actor, you're going in to audition and hoping to get the role, but then you go in, and especially if it's a role for a Black person, and there is no one Black behind the table.
Right. And sometimes a Black story. And it's like, and you guys would come in and audition and have to act like that's right. Like, and that people, what is being said back to you, like people are talking with authority about something that they don't have authority.
They have not a clue about it. We have to act like, oh, yep, you're right. But
what's so funny to me is how, like, a lot of times casting directors will say, like, oh, we make decisions in the room. Sometimes it is an actor, I'm standing there and I'm looking around, I'm like, I don't want to book this. I don't want to. If I get this job, I'm going to have to come to work with this for 6 weeks. I have been in the middle of a song and went, oh, no. That is because you start thinking this is what I'm going to be experiencing, but 10 times more, because then there will be the cast and the full creative team and it's insane what you feel in those moments. And we don't talk about it. We can't communicate about it. There's sometimes I even I wish they would just trick me and just get Black readers. Like, okay, the whole creative team's gonna be white. At least let the readers be Black.
Or at least let the piano player. If you
Well, that's what. Okay. I'm not gonna say the name of the project, but this was one like this, and I was casting it, and all the control I had was the reader and the piano player, and those were the only two people I had control of, and those are the only two people that were non-white in the entire room.
Let me say this.
Can I
talk? If you want one of us to come into a room and you say you want a gospel song, you must have someone that can play a gospel song. Music. And I don't mean note by note. I mean somebody that's
like with some feeling in it.
Yes. To give you what we know you want.
Yes.
So
because that piano player can mess you up real good.
Yes. And make you think you're not Black.
Wait, James, what?
Go ahead, James, I'm sorry.
No worries. With my collaborator, Charles Vincent Burwell on Cuba Moore, I've been in that exact position with regional theaters about an Afro-Cuban show where we had someone who could play the audition and played it fairly well, but then we got into a room with the creative staff from this regional theater, and let's just say that it was neither Afro nor Cuban. And then the entire artistic staff started to lose their mind because they were going, well, it doesn't sound the same. Why doesn't it sound the same? And they couldn't conceive the idea that when we said we needed actual representation of an Afro-Cuban percussionist, a music director with experience of both Latin and Afro-Cuban music,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the entire project just had this tension underlying it, because as a creative team, as the writers, we don't want to say, well, we were right, why the hell didn't you listen to us?
Right.
Why wasn't this assembled before, so
Right.
that there was equal conversation going on?
I have a question just for the two white men on the panel. Like, as we're sitting around talking, like, these things seem so basic to us. Like, it's like 101.
Yeah.
And why is it like that for us? But there are entire rooms, entire creative teams where they don't understand what we're like. That's what I have.
See, I think they do understand, Amber. I don't think that they don't understand. I think that they're comfortable in their privilege, and no one wants to give up privilege. I mean, and that's just realistic. Whether or not your privilege is you have a car and someone else doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Can I talk about the money elephant in the room for a minute?
Talk about the money elephant.
So
yes.
in my transition from being an actor to being a writer and a producer, I spent a good number of years working in philanthropy and as a grant writer for not-for-profit institutions. My entry into that world was being a grant writer for Bill T. Jones, right when he merged with New York Live Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And even there, the amount of song and dance and coded language that we had to use on grant applications for the NEA and artworks was, it blew my mind, because here you're working with a multiple Tony Award winning creator and Kennedy Center Award winning creator.
They'll know.
And yet the game that had to be played to make the people reading those applications feel comfortable enough to give this man his operating budget for a not-for-profit arts administration. And I think that it speaks to that power dynamic that you were just talking about, but also the fact that so much of the not-for-profit sector especially, and the commercial world to a degree, runs on such razor-thin margins that people are so afraid in every category. So you add racism to the mix of a grant application, and all of a sudden that's a house of cards just waiting to go.
All right, so this is good.
Yeah.
Good, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's also so much. I agree with what you said, Yo, but I also think that there are a great number of people who are racist and don't know it, and it's being complicit.
Yeah,
it's just going on because their worlds are not rocked, their worlds are not changed by. So there's no reason to be thinking about something else. So it's living like it's living above the clouds in a way. And
with money, they're used to operating in a different fashion. Like what BAC is seeing right now is suddenly people are writing all these checks. They think their money is going to fix these problems.
Right.
People suddenly money is appearing out of the sky because that's what they know to lead with. When there's a problem, we write checks. Right. They don't understand they're racist. They don't understand they have some unlearning to do. They don't it's just so it's disappointing because I feel like how will we ever fix this if they don't even know?
So then let's explore that. Let's talk about that, right? Because that's the next piece of exploring the strategies that we need to help dismantle all those things that we just talked about, right? You've thrown out a lot of stuff, whether it's the money that is needed or is given to us with no insight about why we need it, right? We talked about the auditions. We talked about, even going to a meet and greet and you being the only Black one in the room in the meet and greet. All those things. What kind of things, guys, can you start thinking about that you would like to see, right? That can help dismantle the crap that we do see.
The things that we would like to see, people aren't brave enough to do.
Do it. Tell me. Talk. Let's challenge them.
What it is we have to dismantle it, which means some people are going to have to be fired.
Okay.
And that's what people don't want to do. There's a stepping aside that has to happen. If your whole board is 12 white people, 6-7 of them need to go. Like that's the reality of it. Is you're going to have to do hard work. You're going to have to go out and find people, Black people, people of color who are capable to do this job. And you're going to have to bring them in, and bringing them in gives them a little piece of power. So it's like, that is the number one thing. We were on a call with people from a very fancy theater. And when we said stepping aside, everyone said, oh, well, we're not stepping aside. We don't know about that. And it was like, exactly, the thing that will actually cause the change, none of you are willing to do.
Or listen to this. You don't even have to step aside, but slash some of those budgets so that you can add more people to your team. How about that?
Yes.
Okay, so I like that. I like
the
that.
money is there.
All right.
Y'all want to throw checks? Throw the checks to the people that you can add to your boards and your producing teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that
I like
can also be an option.
Mm-hmm.
So what about on the creative side, on the directorial side? I mean, what can be done? Don't you think, or do you think it makes sense to hire more Black creatives in the process?
Starting from the most basic. If you have an all-Black show, have an all-Black director. I'm sorry, because they understand there's no explanations that need to be given about.
We know this top down. We know
right.
If a producer decides, I'm just saying Color Purple because it's right here. If a producer decides, I have the power and I have the money and I'm producing Color Purple. Well, my favorite director and my friend is the white man standing right here. That's my partner. That's my friend. I'm not going to go out of my way to cast a Black stranger. So it's like they first have to expand their circles, because when you're a producer with money and your whole circle is white, and nothing's ever been wrong with your money, why are you going to try to fix it now? Like nothing is even broken to them. If we didn't have a pandemic and George Floyd in the street, the shit would have kept going the way it's going.
This is true.
So
this is the truth.
From the top, if all the houses are owned by white families, if all the producers are all white, if all the casting, like it can't just be we got to throw in a Black director, which we need to do, but it's like from the top down, we've got to start that gatekeeper mentality. The old boys club has to be cleared out to make way so that we have more commercial producers who are of color, so that we have more casting associates. It's top down.
Okay, so Eric, what you got to say?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I agree 100%. And I think of it in terms of now, I do the casting for North Carolina Theater, but not being in casting, being here as a producing artistic director, what things can I do? And, you know, when it comes to programming, I think it means I approach it from two sides and want to do more of that, making sure there are stories that are being told that are African-American stories of people of color, not just stopping there, but then also coming in, because I'm also passionate about stories that used to be, you know, shows that used to be quote unquote white shows. How do you change that up? And so we have been doing that and pledged to do a lot more of that. Those feel like active steps, baby steps. And then I know that I can do a lot more with the creative teams. And then we have to go inside. We have to do it in our staff and our board, as Amber was saying. Those are practical steps, at least for where to begin.
And marketing. Because we have to market. So a lot of times somebody said to me, well, Black people at theater is just not something that's in their lexicon. It's like nobody wants to go somewhere where they don't feel welcome.
Right.
And if I walk down Theater Row and it's 17 marquees and they all got white people's faces on them, why do I want to go there and spend $250 on a ticket?
Right.
So we have to do more for community outreach. We have to invest in marketing. You have to bring in people who speak the same language as Black people. How do we make them feel welcome to get? I can't. And it starts young. When I was doing Hamilton in San Francisco, they bought a bus of teenagers from Oakland who were 16, 17, 18. It was the first time these kids had left Oakland to cross the bridge. It starts in schools. You have to start going in schools, having artists go and talk to kids and do outreach there, go to the churches, go to the community. It's about making people feel welcome.
And beyond that, and making it more affordable to people that can't afford it. The people that mostly can't afford it are the Black children. Because tickets are $150 plus for each person.
So Antoine, are you saying that that white people should take their money and put it in, I don't know, foundations that are dedicated to making sure that Black children get to see theater so that can help this?
Absolutely. And not even just Black children, just children of color, period, because usually it's the Black and brown kids that cannot afford to see theater, and it's really sad. It truly is.
What do you think about colorblind casting?
First of all, I want to get rid of that saying.
Colorblind casting makes sense. That doesn't make sense. Yeah,
it's a terrible phrase.
And
what should it be?
From both a writer's standpoint and a performer's standpoint.
I don't know what it should be, but it shouldn't be that. I just know for me also, if you are going to do that, make sure when you do it that you make the story make sense.
Yeah.
Don't just put a Black person or a person of color in a role so you can say, oh, we've reinvented this show. This person traditionally wouldn't play this, but we have this person playing it. So come on and see it. You have to make the situation real. I was in a show not too long ago where the situation just was so unreal that every day I would walk on the stage and be like, okay, I guess we just have to do it this way. Nobody's gonna pay attention to the elephant in the room, but hey,
Eric,
we're on
could you
Broadway.
speak to that, Eric? Could you speak to this?
Yeah, I think,
Oh, I think we may have lost your sound.
He's back.
All right, so he's.
I've seen.
Okay.
You know, I do love pushing the envelope with providing opportunity and re-exploring, and therefore allowing non-white people the opportunities to play some of these incredible roles. But I hear you when it can make sense, when it can be believable, feasible, and believable and feasible doesn't mean like programmed ideas of what things have to be, but just to the story. But I do support doing that when it works, but I don't think of it as colorblind casting because we're not trying to make you not see what the person is in front of you.
Yeah, but sometimes sometimes making them not see that is more detrimental than anything else, because I don't want to say what show I was in, but the time period, there was no way that you could not pay attention that this was a Black man in a role that was not written for him.
Yeah.
So it was.
And so what is it? They didn't acknowledge the fact that you were Black. They were pretending like you were just.
He was just another person on the stage.
He was just another person in the town during this time period that just
existed.
Yeah. But Eric, I agree with you to have the opportunities for people to play these different roles, but you have to make it make sense. It can't just be like we're throwing somebody in there to give them the opportunity. It just sometimes it just does not work. It had the attention to detail has to make sense sometimes. At least.
I agree. I agree with that. I remember when I first started doing theater in North Carolina, I actually went for a role, and as I was walking down the hall, everyone told me I would not be cast because a white woman was already cast in the role. It was for a white woman. They could not imagine a Black woman doing this particular role. I went in ignoring them, saying, and I remember the director looked at me and said, "Oh my God, I see something new." It pissed the entire community off because I was new. It was like I literally had just gotten here, and all of a sudden, this Black woman came in and stole this white woman's part, is what they said. So how do you deal with dismantling that concept, right? That even if the role is transparent to who could play the role, what's the big deal about people of color being cast? There are people who are complaining about that.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, the production we did here of Annie last summer, John Eric Parker played Daddy Warbucks, and I directed it. And
Very nice.
And it wasn't that I set out saying, I'm going to do this way. It's not. Was I open to it? Did I have many different people on a list for Daddy Warbucks? And yes, but John Eric did it. And, you know, he walked out on stage and a lot of people hadn't paid attention to their playbill or whatever. And this gorgeous man walks out on stage as Daddy Warbucks. And if anybody had a problem with it or or they couldn't get on board with it, it was for 1 second and then it was done. And so that's an example of how I think we can tell the people what we're going to do and they will catch up. But we have to take those steps.
And that's key, right? The audience.
Yes.
Right? Because isn't that part of the issue, the audience, getting the audience?
Subscribers are old white people and they want to see Grease.
So what do you do? So again, what do you do? What strategy do we need to start exploring to help educate those those people who are paying.
James.
Produce new musicals.
Yay, James. Some of my friends, we were just talking about this literally 2 hours ago. It's like, it's going to be uncomfortable. You are going to lose subscribers. You are going to lose money, but it's for the greater good. It may take you 5 years to recover, but you are going to have to do it. We can't keep operating like this.
And you're going to recover. That's it.
You're going to recover. You may
recover.
lose some, but you will gain them back.
And you'll gain more.
And to what Antoine was saying, and Amber too, if you are also building it from the ground up with kids and educational programming, and I think of like Ashland, Oregon Shakespeare, which was something that I had the fortunate ability to go see as a privileged young white kid growing up in Northern California. Their educational programming was off the chain, and they created generations of people that come back every year. Every theater company in the country has the ability to do this by having this kind of conversation with its audience members. So,
what do you think about funding Black theater as a response to helping to dismantle the racist environment we have in Broadway and in regional theater?
You know what? Ruben Santiago Hudson, who I'm sitting at his feet, he said, as Black artists, yes, because we are who we are and it's in our blood, we are going to put our energy into helping white organizations and institutions fixing their stuff. Because everyone should be able to go to work in a space that is equitable, where they feel safe, where they don't feel oppressed, where they don't feel discriminated against. But then we, as Black people, need to work twice as hard to build our own. We have to pool our resources and start building our own. Why don't we? How is it 2020 and there's not a Black theater? How is there not a theater? How is there not something?
Right.
And so, sure, I would love for white institutions and organizations to give us checks and say, you know what? Yes, we want to see you all succeed. But as Black people, we have to start having these conversations with ourselves that we need to pool our resources and create our own. Because there's only so much, and so there's only so long we can keep asking for something at a table that was not built for us. We got to go build our own table.
And white theaters and white theater owners and producers have now for decades marginalized the Black theater circuit, whether it's the Chitlin circuit or the church issues or everything or surrounding it. So there's been a systematic marginalization of successful Black theaters since the 1920s and 30s in this country.
Even as Black people, we don't even appreciate our own Black theaters. We're like, but that theater is in Harlem, and I want to, it's not on 42nd. Like, we do that to our own.
All right, so let me be controversial here. If we put our funds in Black theater, is it okay for non-Black people to come in and direct that Black theater?
Why? Why would they do it, Yodi?
That's the thing. I have an answer to that. Because this used to come up all the time. Like if people would talk about, having Black people in quote unquote white shows, and they would say, but we can't do the reverse. And I said, no, you can't. No, you can't, because it is not equal. You can't have a white person in The Color Purple. You can't do any of that mess because it is not equal. The day that there are equal opportunities, we can have that conversation.
But we got to catch up.
Right.
Yes.
Before we can even go there. Let us get a couple hundred years. Let us catch up to y'all. Then we want to see all white fences. But that's it. That's not now.
That's right. Well, I was going to say earlier. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, but also with when we do all Black shows, sometimes like I was in the all Black version of Carousel. That was the reality then. There were all Black towns in Oklahoma and Colorado at that time. We didn't have to change anything from the script. I think we changed 2 lines where it says something about her blonde hair. That was it.
She could have blonde hair.
These towns existed then. Yeah. So it was a reality. So this wasn't Black people doing a white people show. This were Black people telling a Black story in that time.
Right. I was just going to say, as far as taking the time now to truly restructure, unfortunately, we are in the perfect time to do it, because theater as we know it it's gone.
gone.
Everything is going to have to be reborn. So
Until-
this is the time to change it.
And I heard today that it's not until January that Broadway might
It's
even
March.
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 Yeah.
I think.
So Eric, to that point, so much time, right? So this goes to the last area I wanted us to talk about, which was examining our roles, right? Of who does what in the process of moving us forward, right? Whether it is Broadway, the institution, or Black people as actors. And I'm gonna call Amber out for a moment on this one, right? Because one of the things I didn't do in introducing her was tell you that she is also a screenwriter, right? And in the time that I know Amber was in between being on Broadway or being in regional theater, she went and wrote a screenplay, award winning, directed it, produced it, and is now, out there. And so, yeah, let's give that a hand because
Antoine is my PR. Antoine is my manager.
So what are our roles in this wait period? James said earlier, write more plays, write new plays. What can we be doing for the folks who are watching to encourage them to help us along this way, again, of dismantling the racism? We've talked about a lot of different things. What is our role in this?
I think restructure. Go ahead, Amber. Go ahead.
As an actor, so I'll speak as an actor. I think one of the greatest gifts of right now is that everybody is on their couch. If there are people that you wanted to collaborate with, send your script to, write a song with, no one has a job. So as an artist, I know a lot of time what keeps us from creating is, well, I'm doing 2 gigs and I don't have any time. So now you have no excuse to pick up that phone to say, dust off that script, dust off that novel, pick that album back up. I think it's time for artists to start creating. And yes, we are in the middle of a pandemic and a race war. So yes, we have to be gentle with ourselves. And yes, we can't put too many deadlines. And mental health and cocktails are very important. But if you can carve out some time for self and really start, because a lot of time the frustration is, well, there are no plays, and even our Black plays aren't written by Black people, or there's so many different arguments. But right now, we aren't going to be working for the next 6 to 8 months. You could come out of this having produced something, having created something. So I think as artists, and creating can mean anything. It could be starting an organization. It could be whatever you want it to be, but we have to pull our resources and start working together. It's not, I think Issa Rae said it, we're always looking up, like I'm trying to climb. There are people left and right of you who have skills that you haven't tapped into, they haven't tapped into. Come together and see what you can make. I think that's one of the roles of the artist right now.
I agree. And then I would even comment to the point of producing things. If there's something that you can go and produce, whether it's contributing money towards it, and this again is to people who have the ability to have discretionary funds and put it somewhere.
Because not everybody's a writer. If writing is not your gift, that's okay. But you could help fund. Or you'd be like, oh, you know what? I know a lighting designer. Or I know somebody who makes costumes. It's like pooling our resources and working together to help those who are the writers or are the actors so that they can be supported. That's what it's about.
I agree. We had a foundation called Culture for Kids, where we were inviting young kids, underrepresented minorities, to come to Broadway shows, actually at North Carolina Theater, Eric. And what my husband and I were doing, we're buying the tickets. And because I knew people, I could help get them backstage, but giving them that experience so that they could want to one day dream to be on that stage. Because Antoine, I was learning a little bit more about you today and was intrigued that you came out of, was it South Dakota?
No, so I'm from Gary, Indiana, originally, but I also grew up in Sioux City, Iowa. I went to college.
Okay, Iowa. I was close.
I went to college in South Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah, University of South Dakota.
But your exposure to theater, how did you get exposure to theater?
Actually, in community theater, high school plays. High school, always the only Black person in the show. But just having that opportunity to be exposed to it, I think would open up so many doors for so many people.
So for
not everybody's meant to play sports. Not everybody's
that's
meant
exactly
to
right.
Politics. sometimes your calling is to be that actor or that artist or that writer, you know? So yeah.
You know, I think that's a good point to people who are trying to take arts out of public schools. Don't do that. If you need to go, you know, write to your congressman or whoever we need to write to in this pandemic quiet time to tell them put the funds back in the school, we need to
Absolutely.
do that, right? Because that's
Absolutely.
where we catch an Antoine. I have a question for you, Eric, that came in the chat, and that is someone asked, what do you do in a situation where a show has been miscast and you know it's been miscast and maybe there's a window to do something or not? How do you respond to that?
It's a great question. You mean on the Broadway level?
And even regional.
Well, regional, I would have. I mean, I could. Well, I don't know. I mean, when you say miscast, you mean. I mean, if something's already going, I don't know how you make that change. But I can address it as far as a casting director on Broadway, and I can address it as far as times that decisions will be made that wouldn't be the choice of the casting director or our office. And it's all a political decision. I mean, I shouldn't say it's all political, but it's a team effort, and there are certain producing teams that are going to make certain decisions, and there are times that we have a real say with that and times that we don't. There are times that I have spoken up. There are times that I have caused scenes. There are times that I have said, we can't do that, and give me another day. If you say that we haven't seen the right people, then give me another day, give me another week. And there are times that has helped. So I guess that's a way of saying I didn't allow the miscast to happen. I don't know how to fix it when it has happened, except to learn from it, because I haven't ever been in the position of power to change it once it has happened on the Broadway level. If it was
have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen any one of your colleagues who might have been able to correct a wrong?
I can tell you who can, but I'll let you go ahead first.
No, you go ahead. That might help me.
Now, and maybe you can answer this question. So Wicked has been on Broadway for 16 years and has recouped their money maybe 1 million times over. Black people have been capable and have been hired to be the standby for 16 years. Well, not even 16 years. I want to say maybe in the past 10 years, they've chosen Black people to be standbys. Why are we good enough to be the standby, but we are not good enough to be billed in the role? Like, what is the thought process of that? Good enough to save the show if need be, but not good enough to drive the show.
Can I say, Antoine, there was a show a couple years ago. It was going to be off Broadway. The director, I love, Tony nominee, she called me. She said, Amber, I'm going to be blunt with you. They want a blonde girl. They're going to cast a blonde woman. Would you do me the favor and the honor of learning the material and coming in and just doing it? She said, I can tell you, you won't get the job, but I need you to help me help them see something. And I loved her. And the material was so challenging. I was like, yes, I learned it. They kept me in the room for an hour. They had to bring me water and snacks. I was in there so damn long. I left. She calls me the next day. She says, I want you to know something. Yes, they are casting the white woman with the blonde hair. She said, but we talked for 2.5 hours because they didn't even think a Black woman was capable or even had the skills required to play the role. And it was like, I was a part of a freaking science experiment.
Yeah, systemic racism.
She needed me to come to prove to them that a Black woman contained skills of improv. Like, it was the craziest thing. And it was like, I was sad because I knew I could have killed it. I was sad because that money would have been great. That exposure would have been great. But there was a part of me that was like, that's what it is. They don't even think we're capable to carry it. So
this goes back to what we talked about before, Amber. Does that mean that Black people need to divest from white institutions?
It's like something Audra said to me a couple of days ago. She was like, if a little Black girl wants to be able to work in these spaces, I want her to be able to do that. I want to help set it up so that if she gets a job here, she feels safe going into work. So that's why I was saying, yes, we have to still help, because those spaces should still be safe.
Mhm.
Those spaces should still be equitable. People should be able to go into work and not carry the burden of being the only one in the room. Yes, we have to also work on our own stuff. Like, I think it's two ways. I think, yes, the answer to your question is yes, and not completely, but yes, we got to pull away, and yes, we got to invest in our own. I don't know. I don't know.
And it's having uncomfortable conversations, as we've said here, and it's challenging people. If I've learned anything from the casting experience, it's replaying tapes and thinking, when could I have held on longer? When could I have really upset the apple cart? When could I have said something that could have gotten me in trouble because I believed it? And I hope that I can do that more because of this. And I hope that other people will do that. But the times that talking about not going with, because it's less for me thinking miscast and changing, it's more about thinking, when were there missed opportunities for what could have been the better casting choice? And I think, you know, the times I heard long, lengthy conversations on how something wouldn't make sense, or that wouldn't have been that way, or that changes this relationship here, or that, or you know, so often it's not even that people think that they're doing a racist thing, but like Amber was saying earlier, they can't fathom not casting this person who they've worked with 12 times, who has 2 Tony Awards. And so they can't think of not going there and going for this choice that's actually the better choice in that moment.
So I saw that the Broadway Advocacy Coalition had a 3-day workshop. And one of those days was to include people, white people, to come in and hear our stories. Is there anything else that's being planned for the future so that they can hear or understand more of these kind of conversations, so that they can be ready, if that's the right word, for
talking about
opening?
having more of all of it. We want to try to do a almost weekly or bi-weekly moment of healing, because we see that because we're in a pandemic, everybody's spread apart, and a lot of people are suffering through things alone, or people are at home with their families who don't understand the arts and don't get it. So priority on our list is taking care of Black people. We want to provide spaces so that we can come together and keep talking and keep listening and keep sharing. Then yes, we do want to create more opportunities, because what someone said was missing from our panel is, I just want to see 3 white people have a conversation. And I agree. We want to see a producer, a casting director, and someone in marketing sit down. We got to find 3 people brave enough. I might be calling you Eric, but just you know, we want for people to actually sit down. We understand the need to feel safe. This is not about, because a lot of people are afraid we're gonna put you in a room and they'll be like, "You're racist." It's not that. Right. For me, that's not what we're interested in. We are literally interested in having conversations and listening. And that's another thing that we want, because it's like, white people, we've given you a lot of time to listen, read books, have conversations, but now we want to hear where you are, because it's a lot of scaring and looking going on. But what if we come into a room and just start having a basic conversation? And so those are the things we are planning, more forums, trying to work together with all these other organizations that are being formed, so that we are a united front, and start taking slow but certain baby steps towards making some change.
That's awesome.
And one thing I just want to bring up is not being scared. Pandering and tokenism is wrong. We know that. But people can't be scared to do that. You just can't stop there. I don't mean tokenism, but we have been accused of pandering by doing shows that were Black at NCT, and it infuriated me. But I'm like, you know what? Fine. They can think that. We just have to do more. We have to prove that it wasn't a one-time wonder, that we're not just trying to say we did this, but we have to do more and more. But you can't stop at the fear of being accused of that, or you have to prove yourself and keep doing more.
Right. I
It has
know,
to be
you
an
know,
ongoing conversation.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I keep coming back to this because I predominantly work on new musicals throughout my career, of that this is a topic that we have to always return to. We are not ready for it to not be a part of the conversation. And
Great.
so we have to be okay with, like you said, sitting in the room and having awkward conversations or making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And
So, yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think to Amber's point, it's important that you do have the white people having the conversation, but I think that you also open up the room to other people to hear that conversation, because even now in this conversation we're having, people are being enlightened, right? They're hearing things that we talk about all the time that we think you know about, but they don't. They don't understand the racism that exists. And I love the idea, Eric, that North Carolina Theater is doing shows that may be Black stories only, and that you're continuing to do them. I know Theater Raleigh did Scottsboro Boys last year with a Black director, and it blew me out. It blew me away. First of all, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina, regional theater, bringing in this show, and it was a question of would the white people walk out, but they couldn't because it was in their face. I mean, and as a Black person, I was screaming. I had never seen the show. I didn't know the show. And so to go through the experience, it was, for goodness sake, we finally are doing something.
And you
right?
would be surprised at how many people will be okay if you just do it.
Just do it.
Don't ask permission, just do it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
will sit there or they'll leave, but more times than not, they will sit there.
Mm-hmm. So here's I want to throw a few questions out at you to the different areas that we were talking about. One is as far as trying to help dismantle. What do you all think about changing the price of tickets? This is probably going to be more related to regional theater than it is to Broadway, but making it more affordable for people to attend. I know when we did Nina Simone, the one woman play I did here in North Carolina, there was a pay what you can day. Like the regular tickets were like $50 or so, right, at Playmakers. But there was a one or two shows that was pay what you can. And those shows were predominantly Black, sold out. But it made that show accessible to people. What do you all think about that as a paradigm going forward that could be talked about, if you will?
You know, Broadway does this thing called Broadway Week where you buy one, you get one free or get one half off or something like that. I don't see why that couldn't happen like once a week or something. I mean, that maybe that might be stepping over the line, but especially after a show has recouped or something like that, like just making tickets more affordable one night a week or one night a month, or I mean, any little thing I think would help.
So have y'all heard of blackout performances?
Oh, absolutely.
And what do you think about that?
I'm fine with it.
Can you tell them what it is?
It's where tickets are. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they're half price, but it's where it allows Black artists or people in the Black community who can't normally afford a ticket price to come, and only they can come that night. And I think it's very helpful. A lot of people might say, "Oh, that's separatism," but it's not. It's allowing us to be able to come and see theater affordably.
And I think it's being intentional with some of these lottery situations and some of these discounts. Like when I did Rent off Broadway, like there were girls who came 200 times. And it's like, that's taking advantage of the system.
Absolutely.
Like, come on. And she'd sit on the front row and she'd be like this the whole time. Oh, God. It's like
singing every word.
You're understudy.
Let's put them somewhere. Let's not just make it who has the most iPad devices in front of them and can grab the tickets quickly. It's if these tickets are available and affordable, let's put them into an organization. Let's give them to a school. I think it's being intentional about marketing, intentional about our outreach. I think that's what we need to do. I think a pay what you can once a month. Why not?
Why not? Especially after a show has recouped. Like, I mean, I get you want to make money, but making money and helping the community, I mean, where can you go wrong? Seriously.
So this is beautiful because, again, what we're talking about are all the different things that we can help, right, with in dismantling this systemic racism that exists in theater, whether it's in Broadway or regional. And hopefully people will take part of what we're talking about and act on it, right? I'm not suggesting that we have any or all of the answers tonight, but I love that you guys are exploring different things. Now, something came up I thought was interesting. We talked about divesting potentially Black theater, but someone asked a question about why there are no Black theaters in the LORT hierarchy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can I jump on that for a sec?
Sure.
This actually goes back to our previous topic as well. I was going to say the not-for-profit hybrid system of theater right now is severely, severely broken.
Mm-hmm.
It is so reliant on such limited funds to produce, and that organizations need 70% of funding outside, because in some cases they only get 30 to 40 to 50% of their operating budget from ticket sales. Most regional theaters operate on those margins. So I think this is predominantly an economic situation that, because of the capitalist profiteering models that have so forced so many arts organizations to run on these margins, well, if the white institutions can barely do it, then how are the Black communities that are already running on margins far less, how are they going to be able to do it too? And step into a negotiation for a LORT contract and meet all of those demands, let alone just to pay Actors Equity, but if they have a tech union house as well, dealing with IATSE and also dealing with all of the other expenses related to that, it's already outpriced most of those organizations in this country. And this is where the commercial versus not-for-profit hybrid development system plays into it, because you have to have a Broadway hit for that show to then trickle down through all of the regional theaters. And that marketing, branding, tug and pull has really been severely stretched, because you got to bounce a show between 3 or 4 regional theaters, and then you walk into Broadway with $15 million of debt already, because you've had to underwrite 7 to 10 years of development of your show. So with that trickle down, there is no trickle down. There's no way for smaller theaters and smaller community shoestring budget theaters to operate at a higher playing field like a LORT theater. It's just, it's next to impossible financially.
So. You know, I tell people that the work has just begun. And it's going to be a long road to get to a point of where we're all comfortable that we are at the beginning of the beginning, if that makes any sense. We're like on a little roller coaster and we're going like this. We haven't even got to the top part where it goes down like that. We just right? And that means that we're in for the long haul. Like, this is the beginning of the conversation. And I'm hoping that there will be 50,000 more of these. Again, people taking pieces of what we're saying tonight and figuring out how to improve it, to make it accessible for Black theaters to have funds to be a part of the LORT system, right? For us to have this pay what you can or pay nothing at all because we need you in the space kind of theater nights. Almost to the point, and because we're getting ready to wrap this up, so you all have, you know, an idea that we are going to leave this space in a moment. We had something called the Antonio Awards, right? That I know Amber and Antoine participated in for the first time this year on Juneteenth, which I absolutely love. However, I just want us to talk about, why did we need that, and do we still need it?
I think we needed it, especially in the climate that we are in right now, just to have a moment to celebrate who we are and what we do. I mean, we've spent a lot of time in the past 2 or 3 weeks protesting and trying to break things down, and we didn't take any time to just sit back and just allow ourselves to be and appreciate ourselves. So I think it came at the most perfect time. And I think a lot of people finally saw how much we can offer and how much we can do on our own. But it would be beneficial if we tried to do it together.
And it's what we've been saying about all this time, begging to be at this table. I mean, how many threads are there? Like, why hasn't there been a Black host at the Tonys or a person of color host in the past like 10 years? We're looking for, why are the categories so wide? And then I cannot tell you what it felt like watching the Antonio Awards and being like, everybody Black. Usually you're waiting on your 2 categories. I was like, every category.
Right.
We're
There's
all
2
winning.
categories.
I can't tell you what, like, every time a different soloist will pop up. She black, he black, everybody black.
Well, look, Amber, I was like online trying to vote. I was like, okay, let me go vote.
You don't understand what that feels. It was so much joy. People were watching an award show bawling because we just never saw it before.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. It was such a celebration of all the different types and shades and builds and of blackness. It was just beautiful.
Yes.
And it wasn't about being separate from anything. It was just about highlighting
Us.
what we can do.
Yes.
Celebrate.
I think
Right.
encouraged people. It was
Right.
encouraging to see what could be created in quarantine. Like there was a dance number. I was watching 20 people doing the same stuff. I'm like, this is amazing.
And if you knew how little amount of time that they did this in, it would blow your mind. I mean,
Right.
I've seen some award shows that have had months and a year to do. It just didn't quite level out.
In the same room, Antoine. They're all in the same room. Like it was beautiful.
But it was
Beautiful.
outstanding.
Excellent.
And the Adelco Awards exist. Like there are other awards that celebrate Black theater. The Antonios was, I think it was more focused on it because of the pandemic and quarantine. But I was like, this already exists in different fields.
Yeah, well, NAACP has their own awards, and we have our different awards. So it's awesome.
It's just a moment to highlight and celebrate us, and it was beautiful. It was
Beautiful.
So, folks, if you had, and because this is what I want to do now as we get ready to close this out, if you had one thing you wanted to share with this audience, you wanted to leave them with, in light of our conversation, and I'll talk slow so I can give you time to think about that one thing that you'd like to say. Where again, we're in discussion about racism, about Broadway, about how it trickles down to regional theater, but also about how we can explore strategies to help dismantle some of the systemic racism. And we're talking about our roles in this process. If there's one thing you would want to leave with people, and let it be a challenge, what would that be?
I got mine.
Go ahead.
Remembering that the first step in any sort of recovery is acceptance, and accepting that there is a problem. And then the second part of that is letting go of any threat that you as a white person are going to lose anything by furthering this.
And I want people to let go of fear. And like Amber said, sometimes you have to step aside to move the conversation or the situation forward. So I would say, put fear behind you, step out in boldness. Sometimes you might get a home run, sometimes you might not, but you've taken the chance and you can say that you did. And I think that will help a lot of situations, that people would just stop being scared, especially from the top all the way down.
I'd love to challenge people to listen twice as much as they speak.
Woo!
Thank you, Amber.
Come on, Amber.
James?
Yes to everything. And I would say that we all have to be active participants in this conversation.
Yes.
Even if that means being an audience member, especially if you're a money person, you know who you are. And to find things that you don't know about, companies you don't know about, artists you don't know about, especially artists of color who are actively engaged in this conversation, and support them. We can start there, especially as white people, we can start there.
Thank you, James. While we invite Lauren to come back from RDU on stage, I just want to say thank you all very much. I am Yolanda Rabun, and I had the privilege and the honor of hosting an esteemed group of folks from Broadway as well as in regional theater.
Can I say your questions were on point, Yodi? That was
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
Give this woman a show.
And I want to say, I challenge. So I'm going to open up to Gio too, but also with Amber, I'm going to challenge the two of you to take Seth Rudetsky and James Wesley up Amber, you need to run for office. And Yolanda, you need to be right there as well.
Mhm.
Hey, Amber and I are family, just so you know. We go way back, way back. I love her. I mean, she's amazing. So just, we're good.
Yeah.
If anything, I would just encourage us all to remain hopeful. Again, it's a long road, but if we stay together, if we don't give up, if we stay the course, it may not happen in our lifetime, let's be clear, but it will happen if we keep pushing. Lauren?
I don't even know how to follow that up. I'm just like, okay, that's a wrap.
You should follow all these guys on Twitter and on Instagram. They're amazing. They're wonderful. And I don't know if we can throw that up later on, Lauren, as far as
I will put all the links.
Thank
And Amber, I did join the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. I would suggest that everybody do the same, because these are the kinds of conversations that are starting to happen. And I think if you want, we had so many comments and people communicating with each other on Facebook. If you want to be part of these conversations, that's a good place to start. So
Thank you, Lauren.
go there. Tomorrow on, I do want to put this plug. Tomorrow, we are taking a field trip to the West End again, because Mike McGee is going to be talking to Maya Quanish Breed. I hope I said her name right, who was a Laurence Olivier nominee for Six, the musical. She will be with Mike tomorrow at 3 p.m. US time, 8 p.m. London time, to continue this conversation and hear what's happening on the West End in regards to this. And we will also have our Torn panel, Theater on Racist Negativity, tomorrow night at 7:30 on Facebook Live. So just keep talking, keep conversing, keep having the difficult conversations, because this is how it gets done. So thank you, Yolanda. You were
You're welcome.
amazing, wonderful. I'm such a fan of all of you, and just a lot of love and gratitude for all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you
Thank
joined us
you.
late, everything will live on Facebook. You can watch the whole thing from the beginning. It'll be posted on the website, usually in a day or two.
Okay.
But thank you
Awesome.
all.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Lana.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Lauren.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amber.